Good day, my wonderful people. You're welcome to the channel and thank you so much for stopping by. This is Uglo Fashion. Today I'll be showing you how to make this lovely style. It's pleat gown with turtleneck. So please stay tuned and enjoy the tutorial. It's beginner friendly, it's well detailed. This is the measurement I'll be using for this tutorial. Although I will not be using all the measurements in the book, but you will see the basic ones that are useful for this tutorial. And this is the Ankara fabric as well that I'll be using. So I just try to check whether the chalk will really reflect on the fabric. Then to start with, I'll measure from, I folded the fabric into two, then measure from shoulder to chest line. Now the nipple point of my client is 11 inches. From the 11 inches, I minus 3 from it. That's because I did not remember to measure the chest line of my client. So I minus 3 from it. So it gives me 8 inches. Now I measure from shoulder to 8 inches. Then I added ½ inch to it to make it 8.5. So after the 8.5, I measured the circumference of the shoulder. That is 16 inches divided by 2. Then from the shoulder, I measured 7 inches again. This is just to chalk out my armhole. If you don't know how to do this, I have lots of videos on it and I will drop it in the description box. So from there, at the shoulder, still at the 7 inches, I marked 1 inch in, then cuff it, and also mark 4.5, then cuff it just to make the armhole. Then after that, at the chest line, I measured the circumference of the bust, which is 40 inches, and I added seam allowance of 1 inch because I don't really need much allowance for this. I added 1 inch for seam allowance. Then I cut it out. I just slant it. You know how we usually do. I will, from the 8 inches, I added 1 inch to it on the 7 inches. That's to make a slant there. So having done with that, I chalked the neckline. So to get the neckline, I measured 3 inches, 2.5 inches because it has turtleneck by 2.5. So that's for the front. The front is 2.5 by 2.5. If you measure the circumference of the neck of your client, like my own now is 15 inches. That's why 2.5 is okay for me. So if yours is more than that, you can use 2.5 by 3 inches. So, and I later went ahead to cut the back bodies before I cut out the neckline. So after cutting the back bodies, I cut out the neckline of the front. Then at the side here, I measured 1 inch and slanted it back to the neckline. So because there must be a slope at the shoulder. Then I went ahead to measure the neckline of the back bodies as well. So for the back, I measured 2.5 by 1. Then at the side here too, I measured 1 inch at the shoulder, then slanted it back to the neckline, like so, and I trimmed it out. Now for the back bodies, there will be opening at the back for easy access to enter the neck. So I opened the back and I left like 1 inch just to ensure that it's not separated. Now I'm done with both front and back. I'll put that aside. So now from the chest line to the hem of the gown, the circumference I'll be working with, like I said, the bust is 40. So for the front bodies, I'll just say 40 divided by, just let me say 40 for the front and 40 for the back, because I'll be multiplying it by 2. So 40 for the front and 40 for the back. Then for the length is 59 inches. Then 59 minus the 8 inches I used earlier, that will give me 51 inch. Then I'll be adding 1 inch extra for the folding of the hem. So I will need 52 inches for this. So I measured 52 inches. Then for the length, because there's going to be pleat, that's why I multiply it. You know, if it were to be normal gown without pleat, the front should have been 20, while the back will be 20. That will, after summing the two up, it will give me 40. But because of the pleat, I made the front 40 instead of 20. That means I multiplied everything by 2. So after cutting the remaining part of the bodies, I went ahead to cut the sleeve. So for the sleeve, the length of the sleeve ended at the close to the wrist, but it's not exactly at the wrist. So, and I used 20 inches for that. So from the 20 inches, there is like band in between the two, or curve in between the two. So for that, I used 3. So which means 20 minus 3 will give me 17, and the 17 inches, which is for the straight sleeve, the 17 inches I added 1 inch allowance, which means half inch to connect to the shoulder, then half inch to connect to the cuff. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. So having done that, I measured 2, then also 5, and also 11. The 5 is for the bicep, the 11 is for the elbow, and the 18 inches is for the length where the cuff will be connected. And after chalking those ones out, I went ahead to measure the circumference of each, that is the circumference of the bicep and every other part. Then whatever I have at the bicep, I added 1 inch to it at the 2 inches. I don't know the name to call that part, but I added 1 inch just to give me the slope or slant shape. And after doing that as well, I added 1 inch for allowance. That's my seam allowance for the clothes, for the sleeve. Then at the edge here, I measured 2.5 inches. So from that 2.5, I'll just cuff it, yes, like this, just to give me like armhole cuff, you can see. So that is that for the straight sleeve, and I went ahead to cut it out. So this is very easy, it's not hard to cut or to sew. Now, having done with this, I went ahead to, the sleeve will be 2, so I went ahead to cut the remaining parts, the second sleeve. Then I notched both the part that will be connected to the shoulder and the part that will be connected to the cuff. So for the cuff, I measured the circumference of the wrist, not the wrist exactly, but where it ends, and I cut it 2 2, that is 2 for right and 2 for left. Now, having done with all of that, I went ahead to stitch the back bodice first, but I made a mistake. I do not supposed to stitch the neckline, so which makes me to line of the back, I loosed it out. I just stitched the middle, which is the opening. Then I went ahead to just stitch on the front bodies with the lining. So I did not bother to turn this, I just stitched on it, and I did the same for the neckline of the back. Now, after doing that, I notched the middle of the chest line, and also the parts that will be pleated on it, I notched the middle as well. The next thing to do now is just to secure the two together with pin at the middle. So then after that I stitched like 3 inches, then I started the pleat. So for this pleat, it depends if you want it small or bigger, and it depends on the numbers of pleats that you want, but just ensure that the middle align and it's not too big. That is, you don't cut more than the bust multiplied by 2 inches. So then I continued the pleat. When I got to the middle, I removed the pin. Just ensure that the pleat is like 1 inch folded, or it depends on your choice actually. But before I pleat the fabric on the chest line, I try to separate the lining from the main fabric. I ensure that no stitch on it. So I went ahead to stitch the lining on the lining and the fabric on the fabric. I just separated the two from each other. Then I pleat on that as well, and I repeated the same thing at the back. So I notched the middle of the back as well and fixed the middle with pin. Then I continued the pleat. Having done with that, I stitched the shoulders together. This is how to go about it. Either the front of the or the back will be in between. That is, one will be opened and the other will be in between. You can open the back and fix the front inside, or you can do it the other way around. Having done that, I went ahead to stitch the measurements out. That's the allowance I added, which is 1 inch. Now for the collar, I measured the circumference, like I said, is 15 inches for the neckline of my client. I went ahead to measure 15 inches for the collar. You can see I added 1 inch for allowance. So I noticed that it's more than 16 inches actually, so I cut out the excess there. So I measured 16 inches by 2.5 inches. So I cut 2 of that because I'm using them to turn each other, and I added my interface. So to stitch it, I ensured that I did not start at the beginning. I left like ½ inch. I left like ½ inch allowance. Then I continued the stitch. So to do the buttonholes, I folded the, you will still see I shared how to fold the buttonholes. So, and I placed it in between the two on one side, then I stitched on it. So I turned it to the right side. The next thing now is to iron it. So I went ahead to stitch it to the neckline of the dress. Now to do this, you first stitch, you can iron it like I normally do. You iron one side ½ inch in, then the other side you pleat it both. To make things easier here, to make it fast, I just stitch on the wrong side, then I folded ½ inch on the right side. But if you cannot do it this way, you can just iron the ½ inch in. It's easier like that. You can see how I'm folding the ½ inch in. Now this is what we have at the end of the day. The next thing is just to go and fix the sleeve. So but before we do that, let me show you how to sew the sleeve. So for the sleeve now, I've added my interface to the fabric as well. So I just had to shape the edge a bit, just like 1/2 inch in, just to give it this curve shape anyways. So to do the buttonholes, I measured 1.5 inch, then folded it this way, fold this on each other, fold it on each other like this. I hope you get what I did there. Then I just stitch on it. I cut 3 inches for the buttonholes, and from this point I notch 1/2 inch. You can use chalk to do that anyways. I notch 1/2 inch, then after that I notch 1 inch. So I'm starting from the 1/2 inch now. So I just placed it. That was what I did for the back, the collar as well. I mean the turtleneck. That was what I did there. Then I went ahead to stitch on it. So for the 1 inch, you know, this is where the 1/2 inch ends, and that's the 1 inch. So I'll stitch on that as well. Then the next thing is to use the other fabric which serves as the facing to turn it. So I still left the 1/2 inch, then stitch it round. Now this is the sleeve. So I just, at first I stitched the 1 inch allowance I added. Then before I get to the hem line, I left like 3 inches before the hem. I top stitched there so that it doesn't lose. And also I folded it twice like this, and I stitch on it, which means there is an opening here as well. There will be an opening. Then I did the same to this other side. I folded this side too twice. So for this part now to be fixed on the, for the hem to be fixed on the cuff or the band, I placed the folded part at the edge here before, that is after the stitch, sorry, after the stitch. You know I left 1/2 inch, so after the stitch, then don't forget I've notched the middle of these two, that is the straight sleeve and the band or the cuff. I've notched the two. Then I'll just put small pleats, just small pleats at the middle. Yes, just small pleats. So I'm trying to use my scissors to create the pleat. Then I stitch on it to the edge before the 1/2 inch. This is what I have at the end of the day. So, and I went ahead to fold 1/2 inch in. Like I said earlier, you can use your iron to fold this part if it's going to stress you. Just use your iron to make it easier and neater. But I decided not to stand from my chair, so I was just sewing it I just stitch on it because it will still work this way. But if you can't do this, if it's going to give you problem or issue, just at least try and stand up and iron it. So this is what we have at the end of the day. The next step now is just to fix it to my dress. So thank you very much for watching this video to the end. You can see how lovely the style is. Please, if you haven't subscribed, do so. And if you are a returning subscriber, I'm very, very grateful. Thank you for watching the video and remain ever blessed. Bye. Love you.